So we're looking at pages 60 through 71 in Fahrenheit 451 by author Ray Bradbury. As you approach this section, analyze how the author develops our protagonist's internal conflict. He is advised by Mildred to go out driving and hit some rabbits and dogs. It's a great stress reliever. First, we see how devoid of empathy the common citizens in 451 culture like Mildred are. And then we also, of course, see that, her advice, apparently, the research suggests, if taken, leads to still greater urges to vent frustrations violently. So if you're venting your frustrations violently, breaking stuff, for example, that will become a habit, and it will end up being a loop you'll be caught in. And so every time you're frustrated, you will react violently and angrily. And the more you do it, the more difficult it will be to get yourself out of that kind of patterning. Mildred has apparently locked herself into that pattern. We also wonder, too, if she's the one that hit Clarice, right? She knows Clarice was hit and killed somehow. We know she's not reading it in the news. And then she gives this advice to Montag. I'm suspicious, and you should be, too. We see an example of situational irony when Mildred says, I'm tired of this junk, the junk being the great literature that Montag is reading with her. And she turns from the great literature to the junk of the parlor walls, a little situational irony. You might look into how that's an example of situational irony by defining it and explaining. Wow, 20 books, apparently, and some are hidden behind Montag's ventilator grill. When the novel began, we knew something was behind the ventilator grill. We just weren't sure exactly what. It almost seemed like something was watching him, peering down at him from the vents. But apparently, no, it's nothing monitoring his behavior. Instead, it's books, 20. Ask yourself, what 20 books would you squirrel away if you could? If you only had 20. It might be an interesting assignment to do. If you're interested, do it. So Montag's coming to see that, we don't value things. We value their meaning. What they are, of course, is determined by the laws of physics, but what they mean is determined by the laws of psychology, by human beings, by us. What do the books mean? Well, maybe there's some wisdom hidden there that can help us learn how to make a life, Montag is deducing. And of course, that's true. Great literature is equipment for a living, I think. And Montag coming to see a number of things in this section that maybe he should be burned, or at least his profession. Maybe it's not the books that should be destroyed, but the book-burning firefighters themselves. Quite an epiphany that Montag has when we think about how he began the novel, burning in delight, really. Montag's got to kind of straddle this fundamental duality that we have to straddle as well. He has one foot in order and security. He has a roof over his head. He has, food. He has a job. He has a wife. And, one foot in order and security. But he also needs one foot in possibility, growth, adventure, chaos. And that's what reading the books is to him. You also need to aspire to this balance, as Montag takes steps to do so in this section. You need, security and order a little bit, but you also need a little bit of chaos, growth, adventure. And of course, youth is wholly experimental, so in youth you should be taking a number of adventures to figure out who you are and what problem you want to help solve. Because once you figure out what problem you want to help solve in this planet, you've found your career. Montag also realizes what friendship is, how friendship is a thing, how it happens, how to make friendships. It's just kindness over and over, drop by drop, and then suddenly the heart runs over and you have a friend. You have somebody that's special to you. For those of you that are sitting there, all day long between classes scrolling, you're missing out on wonderful opportunities to talk to people that are next to you and to get to know them. And, you do that drop by drop and you have a number of friends and that enriches life. And of course, we need to make sure we're talking to each other in the kind ways that Boswell mentions and that Montag reads in this section. Apparently, the research says we need 5 positive comments to every 1 negative one in order for us to have a healthy relationship. It would be interesting to do a mathematical analysis of the number of positive comments to negative comments between Montag and Mildred in the novel, between Clarice and Montag, and of course between Beatty and Montag as well. I don't know what the ratio is, but it's interesting. This is what the ratio is for divorced couples, so if you want to get divorced, This is the pathway to do so, and apparently half of our country does. So, obviously in work and in life, critical and positive feedback have their place and their time. And so try to use this knowledge to improve your relationships so that we can take the book and actually apply some of the wisdom that it's sharing with us. The ads in Minority Report, a movie from the late 90s, science fiction movie with Tom Cruise, remind me a little bit of what the parlor walls are doing, interacting with Mildred. If you wanted to watch that clip, you can do so. Clarice and Montag here in this picture here, though Clarice a distant memory at this point. Someone comes to the door. They don't answer it. Is it Beatty? I don't know. Probably. Because I think the Hound comes next, sniffing around, which is why I think Beatty probably came to the door a second time. But to do what, I'm not sure exactly. The Hound is definitely trying to send Montag a message. We know the Hound is like a missile. It's only sent by someone. Again, we have to assume that that's Beatty. We have 2 atomic wars that have been won, apparently. And we don't know against whom or why. And maybe the books have some wisdom in them that can help us stop making the same damn mistakes. That's why I read, because I don't want to make the same mistakes that have been made before. That's why we stretch our minds and expand our understandings of the world. And we learn that we've lost nuclear warheads ourselves as a nation. We've had planes in the air with nuclear warheads every second of every day since I've been born and since World War II. And we've lost dozens of the warheads. One fell and injured 2 children in a playhouse, apparently. We haven't even found many of these. The Russians have lost numerous broken arrows, too. That's what it's called when you lose a nuclear weapon. We issued the President Truman and his cabinet and the Allies in World War II an ultimatum to the Japanese after we defeated the Germans in the European theater. And the ultimatum said, surrender or else, basically. And apparently the Premier of Japan, Suzuki, responded with mokusatsu, which means no comment in Japanese. But unfortunately, it was mistranslated by news agencies as, quote, your ultimatum is not worthy of comment. So we take the neutral no comment and we turn it into the, I have disdain for you, you're beneath me, you're not worthy of my time, negative comment. And then we drop the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You wonder if the translation had been correct and it was more of a neutral response instead of a negative one. Could we, maybe have negotiated with the Japanese to prevent this? We'll never know, of course. But I think it brings to mind the importance of translators and translating things accurately. It reminds us that translations are not perfect. They're always imperfect by necessity. There are words that don't always have equivalents in the language that you're speaking. I think of Schadenfreude, which I'm butchering, sorry, German speakers. That sense of joy you get in the pain of other people. There's really not, like when someone trips and falls and you laugh, there's not really an English equivalent for that term in German. So I guess a reminder of how important translations are. And if you speak more than one language, you already know about all this. Montag quotes from Gulliver's Travels, where people in that novel fight each other over which end of the egg should be broken when you make an omelet or whatever. And so, throughout history, people have proven themselves willing to die rather than submit to oppression, as the Ukrainians are seeing fit to die for their homeland in the face of the Russian invasion. And you have to wonder if people are willing to die over eggs, should they be willing to die over matters of much more significance, like censorship, like one's homeland, as the Tibetans have to do from the occupying Chinese, who every day inflict brutal oppression and torture upon them. Where do you find a teacher this late? Montag wonders. There is a need for instruction, for knowledge, for mentorship. If you don't have a mentor, you need to find one. A mentor is just someone older and wiser in the things that you're interested in. This is often taken for granted, but you need, to hand the baton of culture from one generation to the next, and that is a transmission, and that transmission matters. And we're all, by our actions and words, showing people around us how to respond to us and what behavior we are willing to tolerate as individuals. And we're also teaching those younger than us, or really anyone around us, how to act and how to be. And so every word and every action you make matters, especially when it's around other people. And even when you're not around other people, it matters because there are people that love you, and the decisions you make when you're not around them affect them too, which you can never forget. Please. A new character enters Montag's life. His name is Faber, a name that means builder or maker. This connotation not an accident. It's a purposeful decision by our author. So Montag now has to enter his third stage of growth, and he's beginning slowly to assume command of his destiny. Faber's going to show him that the alienation and conformity in society have not been caused by technology, but instead by humans who stopped reading of their own accord, by their own decision, and that too few resisted the trend towards the standardization and degradation of humanity, including, Faber will say, himself. Well, how well is Montag doing? Well-being can be established and assessed in these 5 domains. So in the assignment I'm going to ask you to do on Canvas is to look at how well Guy is in these 5 areas and how well we are doing as well, so that we can have a check-in too about that. Because, after the trauma of the past few years of dealing with COVID and all of the changes and the upheavals in society and the challenges with conflict in our own country with a media that is constantly trying to clickbait you into getting angry at other people so that they can get more money for their clicks. A world of bloggers who don't care about anything news related, but instead just want to make you outraged, because the more outraged you are, shocked you are, the more likely are you to click on things. And so we've all been traumatized by that, by the media, by the war in Ukraine, by the Chinese occupation of Tibet and the treatment of Hong Kong, and the Chinese response to the Hong Kong people, and youth itself is traumatizing. They say we experience 5 to 7 traumatic events in a lifetime, and Montag has been traumatized. But that's not the end of the story, because post-traumatic growth, yes, it's a thing. It's about positive psychological change as a result of experienced adversity or trauma or highly challenging life circumstances. But you can wind up richer after the trauma than before. And our character Montag has to use the growth from his traumatic experiences of his life as materials with which to collage, to piece himself back into being, to build himself into a hero. Hero, a word that means protector of what matters. It doesn't mean, a person who can go out and kill a bunch of people. A hero is a protector of what matters. In this case, literature and ideas. Bradbury wants you to use Montag as an exemplar, as an outstanding example, as an inspiration to grow beyond your current self. Take what life gives you and form it into something useful, something like service to others that can then give you meaning and purpose. Because if you have meaning and purpose, you're going to be happy. If you pursue happiness, you won't be happy, the research says, or at least as happy as the people that pursue meaning and purpose instead. And if you don't know, ask a mentor. Check out this infographic, pause the video, look at it. Think about what you're doing to grow beyond your previous self as a result of the trauma of what you've experienced. We have perspective on the trauma too, right? The context of the trauma gives us a larger picture of the world, not just what's immediately in front of us. We've got to remind ourselves that we're a part of a big, big story, okay? We also have to frame our perspective as well, and that's our unique way of looking at the world. That's a way of interpreting events. So when it comes to growing beyond yourself, post-traumatic growth, how you look at things, your perspective matters. And perspective has 2 definitions for us. So if we limit and expand our perspective to whatever will keep us calmest and most ready for the task at hand, we'll be preparing ourselves for success, building habits that will, carry us through life successfully. We don't want to, deceive others, but we can selectively edit what we experience in order to focus on what matters most. For example, not clicking on that clickbait. That orients you, gives you a perspective on life that probably will be better for your health than clicking on the clickbait. Okay? So what can Montag do when it comes to his perspective on his situation in order to put his future self in a good situation? These are questions for Montag to resolve, questions that he'll need to resolve in order to grow beyond himself, which of course is what he's tasked with next. You too, my friend, are tasked with the same. So, grow.